Good evening, everyone. I'm Cristina Corteva, Executive Director of the Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 2024 Trudy Sundberg Lecture Series. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we present this program from the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Tulalip, Snohomish, Stiwaguamish, and Sauk-Suaro tribes, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and many tribes who have stewarded it for generations. The Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation started the lecture series in 2016 in honor of beloved Whidbey Island teacher and community leader Trudy Sundberg, and also as a benefit to this community. And I want to use the opportunity and recognize the founders of the series who are with us tonight. Marshall Goldberg, and Trudy's daughter, Jan Whitsett. What Marshall and Jan started 8 years ago has grown into a truly special community celebration for the entire Whidbey Island community. Over the years, the series has presented an impressive array of speakers who have covered a variety of topics, creating a unique opportunity for people to gather and hear diverse voices and opinions on important and often challenging topics. This free exchange of ideas in a welcoming environment is not only the perfect way to honor Trudy, it also exemplifies what public libraries stand for, and the Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation is thrilled to continue to support and present the series. A key component of the lecture series is bringing these accomplished speakers to local schools at no cost and carry on Trudy's lifelong legacy of inspiring and empowering youth from an early age. And I'm very happy to report that earlier today, Lyla did a presentation at the South Whidbey High School and South Whidbey Middle School with over 500 students attending, which I heard was amazing. The lectures are grounded in the belief that representation matters, and we are thrilled about this year's focus on celebrating Indigenous wisdom, culture, and values. And we are also truly honored to have Lyla June as our presenter, as we believe that her powerful voice as a woman, scholar, Indigenous leader, and role model for girls and women around the world is especially important. I'm also excited to share that this year we expanded the series by adding a companion event. Last Friday, some of you might have joined us at a very moving presentation by John Halliday, Native American artist and former CEO for both the Muckleshoot and Snoqualmie tribes. Over 90 guests joined us at the Coopville Library for a memorable evening. I want to take a moment to thank all those who helped make this year's lecture series possible. First and foremost, I want to thank our amazing sponsors. Their names were early on the screen, and these are all wonderful local businesses and organizations who care about this community. Without their generosity, these events would not be possible, so let's give them a round of applause. I also want to acknowledge our incredible planning committee. It took over a year of very hard work to make these events possible. If you're serving on the committee, please stand up or raise your hand. Thank you. I also want to take a moment to recognize the tribal members who are in the audience with us tonight. Can I please ask you to stand up or raise your hand? And tonight I want to acknowledge our featured artist, Doe Star, who created those beautiful tapestries that you see on stage and in the lobby. Thank you, though. Joining us tonight are also Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation board members, members of the Sno-Isle Libraries Board of Trustees, Sno-Isle Libraries Executive Director, elected officials, members of community organizations, many library supporters. As you might imagine, it truly takes a village to make these lectures possible, and I'm excited to see so many of you joining us tonight. And we also have lots of guests in the hall and in the lobby. For those of you who are not familiar with the Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation, we help fund innovative programs in the Sno-Isle Libraries District, including both Island and Snohomish counties. We support early literacy, youth and adult programs, author talks, the library collection, building renovations, and so much more. Our work is possible thanks to generous contributions from community members like yourselves, local businesses, organizations, and foundations. The funding the library receives from the foundation is beyond what public funding provides and ensures that our libraries continue to be an accessible resource for everyone in the community. In 2023 alone, the foundation raised over $2.5 million in support of Sno-Isle Libraries. Thank you to all of you who support our work. And before we continue, I just have a few quick announcements. Following Lyla's presentation, we will have time for Q&A, so please remain in your seats. After the Q&A, Lyla will be signing books in the lobby, and I want to share with you that she very generously offered to donate all proceeds from her book sales to the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. And please consider purchasing a copy of her book and supporting this important cause. If you enjoyed today's presentations, please consider supporting the Trudy Sundberg Lecture Series and the work that we do at the Foundation. In your program, there is a QR code that you can access to make a gift. Every gift helps and makes a difference. Finally, I want to remind all of you who love their libraries that on April 3rd, libraries across the country will celebrate Library Giving Day, a national movement of giving back to public libraries. This is another great opportunity to help support free access to information, intellectual freedom, and the life-changing programs and services of your community library. Thank you in advance for your support. And now, it is my pleasure to invite Lyla James Oates. Lily is director at TED Fellows and Trudy Sundberg's granddaughter, and she is joining us today all the way from New York City.
Hello, good evening. It is a real, I'm gonna go like this so I'm not bending over. A real honor to be with you all celebrating the legacy of Trudy. I wanna first thank Christina, thank you so much, and also the planning committee, and my dear mother, Jan, who really continues Trudy's legacy in every way. So, if we're lucky in this lifetime, we can name those unique individuals who enter our lives and forever alter the way we see the world, the way we comprehend the universe. I was probably 6 years old. I remember my grandmother said to me, in that tone she would take when it was something that was important, which was just about everything, "Do you know about Einstein, about his theory of relativity?" I didn't. She handed me 2 corners of a pink blanket, which I held tightly in my small hands. "Let me show you," she said. She took the other 2 corners in her own hands and carefully picked up a tennis ball. "Say this is the Earth," she said, placing the ball in the middle of the quilt. It rolled along the surface of the blanket. She moved towards me, allowing the blanket to cradle the ball. "This blanket is space." I looked at her, baffled. "This is how the Earth moves through space, and the other planets and the stars. See how the sides of the blanket curve around the Earth? That's the curvature of space-time." She proceeded to talk me through Einstein's general theory of relativity. My 6-year-old mind struggled to understand the enormity of the space-time lesson, yet I could sense that my universe was expanding. And it wasn't just the cosmos that she introduced me to. She handed me the first novel I ever read, the first poem I ever memorized. In fact, she probably told me I had to memorize that poem in the first place. She taught me how to play the piano by writing the finger numbers on the keys in Mr. Sketch marker, so the smell of artificial cinnamon and blueberry mingled with my clumsy notes. She convinced me Shakespeare, Dickinson, Fitzgerald, Yeats, Blake, Whitman, Morrison, Borges were friends. People I could turn to when I was alone, afraid, and questioning my place in the world. And I know that I am one of many whose universe Trudy forever altered. And here's the thing about Trudy. She wasn't famous, but she knew everyone. She wasn't a politician, but anyone running for office came to have lunch with her. She wasn't a specialist. She was a voracious generalist with an unquenchable curiosity and enthusiasm for everything from astronomy to history, literature to activism, art to pop culture. But above all, her greatest gift and achievement was love. For her family, her friends, her students, her community, and every person she encountered over her lifetime. It's why, decades later, students recount her influence on their lives. It's why I'm here in front of you today. On the day Trudy died, we discovered a quote written on the inside of her journal from 1947 when she was 22 years old. I thought I'd share it with you now. It's titled My Symphony by William Henry Channing, who was a 19th century Unitarian clergyman and philosopher who influenced Susan B. Anthony. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars and birds, to babes and sages with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, to do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. That is to be my symphony. This lecture series is meant to introduce you to people like Trudy, thinkers and innovators who offer us new ways to see the world. Or, in Lyla June's case, I should say, renewed ways to see the world. And now it's my honor to invite Deborah Parker, a citizen of the Tulalip tribes and chief executive officer of the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition, to the stage. Please welcome her.
Siam Siaya, Utig Witsichel, thanking each and every one of you. Haslahel, good evening. Sitsayaltsa Sitsta Twalchof Duflalab. My traditional name is Sitsayaltsa. It's my grandmother's name 4 generations back on my Snohomish side. I'm also Kiki Ellis and Lummi. So many of us who lived on the shores, of course, our waterways are the canoes, our highways. And so our relatives come from all the way up in Vancouver, British Columbia, all the way into the modern day Snohomish areas and throughout these islands. So I've had the honor in my adult years, as we've brought back the canoe, to pull through these beautiful waters. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here, especially because I have 3 beautiful children. My oldest, his name is Cedar. His Indian name is Palaktin. My daughter's name is Kaya. Her traditional name is Halia. And I have a little guy. He's not little anymore. He's actually 14 and he's taller than me. But his name is Witua. And my kids, we grew up reading books at the Sno-Isle Skill Center in the Marysville Library. And so we read a ton of books. We had goals to read 100 books starting one summer, I remember, and we got through 100 books so fast, and it was such a big goal that my throat got really sore, and I'm like, can someone else read to these kids? And so with all of that beautiful knowledge from our oral history, from the grandmothers and the grandfathers, from their aunties and uncles, from all of those stories, and then the wonderful access to books, especially for being a young mother, having access to teach my children at such a young age about the world around them. So I'm forever grateful for the Sno-Isle Skill Center. And, you know, so with my kids now, my son, Cedar's 27. Last night, he was in Vancouver, British Columbia. He presented on let's get toxic pesticides out of our forests. So he's an environmentalist, and it was the books I showed him. And not only like the wisdom of taking care of our cedar, taking care of the forests and the land, he took that, but he also learned a lot about ecology and science. And so he is now fighting for forests. So I'm like, where's our son? I can't reach him. Is he injured? And they're like, no, he's on the island, Vancouver Island. He's fighting against, they're trying to tear down old growth. And so that's my 27-year-old. My 24-year-old Kaya, she took a flight out about 3 days ago to New Zealand. And so she's premiering her short film called Our Grandmother Inlet. And it's an award-winning film right now. I get to brag about my kids. This is exciting. And so it's so beautiful because it's about protecting Burrard Inlet from the tankers and the oil and the destruction. And so they're living their best life. And I have my little guy. He's actually in the car. He got shy. Again, not little. He's bigger than me. But he's already been fighting across the country against the lithium mines. And he's also been on so many marches and petitioning, and he's met at least 2 presidents already to tell them to protect my waters, to make sure we have clean air for the next 7 generations. So with that, this mom has to work, and my job is the Chief Executive Officer for the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. And yes, thank you. And with that job, our main office is in Minneapolis, but once I became CEO, I made some changes, and I said, I live in Tulalip, and I'm not going to move anywhere that doesn't have beautiful big cedar trees and water. And I'm not always crazy about the rain, but it nourishes us. So made some change, and now we have staff across the country, and many of us live on our traditional homelands and our territories. So. And that's including in far as Alaska to New York to the homelands of the Navajo, to all pueblos. So we have a lot of our relatives doing this work to help bring justice to boarding school survivors. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, from 1901 to 1969, the U.S. government put many of our children in boarding schools. And so 100% of us have been impacted as Native people by the boarding schools. And the boarding school that my family was sent to was the Tulalip Industrial School. There was actually 3, one burnt down, and it became Tulalip Industrial School. And many of our children didn't survive those schools. And so many of my family members didn't survive, and some of them are missing still. So our work across the country is to find these children and to bring them home. And so for many of them, of course, it's finding the burial sites across the country. Many of them the children were from 3 years old up until 16, 17 years old, and they were sent across the country, so they really dispersed our kids near and far. And so my role is to help find records, and in 2020, I wrote a bill, and the bill was introduced by then Representative Deb Haaland, and now she's U.S. Secretary. Thank you. She's a dear friend of mine, and I asked her to help work with me on this bill. So I just flew in from D.C. yesterday. So it's heartfelt work, but it'll be one of the greatest bills that I've worked on, and it's Senate Bill 1723 and House Resolution 7227, and it's entitled Truth and Healing Commission on Indian Boarding School Policies Act. And I helped write the bill. I worked on the bill during COVID. So I was home nice and cozy and wrote this bill, and so far it's been introduced in the Senate, and it passed the U.S. Senate Committee on Indian Affairs unanimously. So and so we're just now, we have some committee work on the Senate side. I just returned from the House side, so we'll get it another hearing on the House side at the Natural Resources, and hopefully we'll have it introduced this year. And of course, if all matches up on the Senate and the House, our president is ready to sign the bill. Yeah. So I was just at the White House on Wednesday, and so I actually seen the Oval Office, of course, and so there was a, rope. And so I just thought, I'm going to put my foot right in there so I can say, I went in the Oval Office. I put my foot in the Oval Office. But it's been a journey, and also as if you have a dream, you know, it's possible. It is possible to work hard, and as many of you know, that to protect the earth, to bring peace back to this world. And I love seeing all the words on the buildings, and so we hope that you'll join us at the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. And Lyla wanted me to let you know that when you purchase a book, some of the proceeds will go to help us get the oral histories from the boarding school survivors who are still with us. So just want to say, Tigwit Seed, thank you for this moment. And I have the honor of welcoming and introducing Dr. Lyla June Johnston, AKA Lyla June. She is a poet, singer-songwriter, hip-hop artist, human ecologist, public speaker, and community organizer of Dene. Setsetsi Hes. I'm going to try, I promise. Let me try one more time. Setsehetsis. Okay, she's going to correct me, but I love that. I'm trying. And European lineages. Her multi-genre presentation style has engaged audiences across the globe towards personal, collective, and ecological healing. Her messages focus on Indigenous issues and solutions, supporting youth, intercultural healing, historical trauma, and traditional land stewardship practices. She blends her study of human ecology at Stanford, graduate work in Indigenous pedagogy, and the traditional worldview she grew up with to inform her music, perspectives, and solutions. Her doctoral research focused on the ways in which pre-colonial Indigenous nations shaped large regions of Turtle Island, aka the Americas, to produce abundant food systems for humans and non-humans. Her intentionally acclaimed live performances are conveyed through the medium of speech, hip-hop, poetry, and acoustic music. Her personal goal is to grow closer to Creator by learning how to love deeper. And I'm going to sing a song, the Cedar Song. So if you stand with me, we're going to welcome Lyla to the stage. ACMT, CM. Thank you. And a round of applause for Lyla June.
Yaat shik aroshidane she nanisht ejit kachini nishla aro successes bashishti ashi hedish chedo bilagana dashanale Taos New Mexico date nasha shima Pat McCabe wolye do she Thomas Johnston wolye aro dane ast anenishla. I'm happy to be here. I come from the Nanisht Ejit clan of the Diné Nation. We are also incorrectly known as Navajo. We are Diné, which means the people. Aro, my clan, Nanisht Ejit comes from my mother, as we get our last names from our mothers, not from our fathers. So I just have to honor those clans before I start speaking. I'm so honored to be here. I'm probably going to get started relatively quickly because I have a lot of information to share. And then I'm going to actually do some music to end it. So we'll see how far I can get in these slides before I need to transition into music. And I'm just so excited to share with you my obsession. Which is Indigenous food systems and Indigenous land management. And hello to everyone in the overflow room. I don't know where the camera is, but I see you, and I wish you were here. Oh, I hear you. Oh. Crazy world we live in. And I want to apologize earlier. I said that one of the Native folks had left because her family felt there wasn't Native people left here. But I meant to say her folks didn't feel like there was enough Native people here for them to feel at home. Because, and they came to me and they corrected me that Native people have been here and there are families who are still here who never left. So I wanted to briefly apologize for that miscommunication there. If you're at the reception, you know what I mean. But in any case, I wanted to say that. And yeah, let's get started in the wild, adventurous world of Indigenous food systems. Okay, so this image is an image of the Florida riverbanks, artist rendition, obviously, of oyster middens that we find. Oyster shell middens that we find all throughout Florida, riverbanks and coastlines. So this is based on actual archaeological sites. And I love this this artist rendition because even though it's probably not perfectly accurate, they probably were wearing clothes, and their thatch huts were probably way more extravagant than those. But you know, things biodegrade, and you don't know what they looked like necessarily, unless you just ask the people; they could tell you. But in any case, I still like it. It gives us a vibe. We're starting to get a little closer to the truth. The vast abundance that Indigenous peoples augmented and cultivated here in Turtle Island. And I have a couple examples, one from Australia, one from Norway too, because I really want to drive home tonight. This is not just a Indigenous phenomenon, this is worldwide. If you go back far enough in time, all of our ancestors were curating the land, clipping it, burning it, pruning it, shaping it delicately and respectfully, but in a way where they had a hand in things. They weren't hunter-gatherers. I think that's the one thing you can walk away from tonight. Indigenous peoples were not hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherer connotes people who are just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna find a berry. I think there might be one here. Oh, there's a deer. All right, I gotta go get my bow and arrow. No, that's more of a victim of circumstance. You're just hoping a wild berry might grow. Instead of a gardener, right? A gardener plants things. A gardener tends things. A gardener takes care of and augments things, which you'll see here in a second. And that gardener has a very predictable source of food. They know where it is, when it's going to be there, and why, because they had a hand in helping to shape it. So, yeah, we'll get to the first couple of examples. This is the Ahupua'a system of the Hawaii, the Kanaka Maoli. This is some of, again, probably was wearing clothes, but I need to update my images. But the burning of the grasslands, which we'll get into. And this is a Bolivian floodplain aquaculture, and this is my people's monsoon harvesting. I think that's the first time I've ever called it that, but that sounds accurate. Okay, first though, we're gonna go to Kentucky. Kentucky is the place where the ancestors of the Shawnee created these gorgeous chestnut groves. And the chestnut, if you don't know, was a really important food source for the eastern nations. And it grew all the way from Maine down to Georgia. And it was an incredibly special tree that the people had a deep and ancient relationship with. Now, when colonization hit, they didn't know how to, they pretty much wiped out 98% of indigenous peoples, is the estimate. And they didn't know how to manage the groves correctly. They thought they were natural wild forests. They didn't understand they were actually tended by people for thousands of years. And because they mismanaged the groves, they developed a blight, which wiped out nearly all American chestnuts. Again, the statistic is 98%. And so it's really hard to find a natural growing American chestnut that hasn't been killed off by the blight. Entire valleys and hillsides would just disappear from chestnut. And so on the left, we have a Tsalagi or Cherokee family with one of their relatives, one of their chestnut relatives, just to give you an idea of the size. On the right-hand side, we have an artist rendition of a chestnut tree that's allowed to be a tree. And what I mean by that is part of the correct management of chestnuts is to space the trees widely. And this is because you want the trees to have enough space, to have enough water, nutrients, and sunlight. That way it has everything it needs to be a big, strong, healthy tree. But as you know, chestnuts drop nuts, and that creates saplings. And so if you don't burn in between the trees frequently, you can have all these saplings come up and actually crowd each other out. And that's part of what really happened, is a lack of spacing of trees. But when a tree is like this, and you burn around the edges and in between, you'd have these great meadows of chestnut, hickory nut, black walnut, all these mass trees, and burning in between to reduce the competing vegetation. It's kind of like you played favorites a little bit, you know? And I'm about to show you a graph of fossilized pollen, which will show you how much they played favorites. So what you can do, and what they did do, is they went to Kentucky, and there's a pond there, and they took out a soil core. And soil cores in ponds have a wealth of fossilized pollen information in them. Because as the pollen settles on the surface of the pond, and then it goes down to the bottom, hits the mud, and fossilizes very, very well. So this next core I'm going to show you has nearly 10,000 years worth of information. And what you do is you analyze each layer of the core. Some nerd, right? So I'm just really looking at everything, counting stuff. And you essentially can reconstruct the forest composition over time. And so the lowest, bottomest part of the core is the oldest, because it's the part that was deposited longest ago. And throughout time, it sort of builds up on top of itself. And so this is the diagram. So on the left-hand side, this is time. And we're really going to look at this line here, this 3,000-year mark. So we have 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000, etc., down to 9,500 years worth of information. And each of these columns is the presence or absence of a certain type of species of pollen. So what you see, around 3,000 years ago, cedar takes a dive. Whoa, it went from basically a big cedar forest, right? A monoculture cedar forest. Down, you have oak making a rebound. You have, where is chestnut coming from? Hickory nut making a strong presence, and black walnut coming out of nowhere 2,000 years ago. And then you have a lot of other edible plant species such as sunflower, goosefoot, sumpweed, which were domesticated by indigenous peoples in the East. So essentially, about 3,000 years ago, scientists are saying that, I should say one more thing. The fossilized charcoal on the very right-hand side indicates that there was a massive and more steady influx of fire in the region that didn't really come in a catastrophic fire and leave, but was much more present. And so what we have is scientists interpret this to mean that about 3,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Shawnee moved in and created a biodiverse food forest that they sustained for 3,000 years without end. This is older than Jesus. So it's quite, I start with this story because it's one of my favorites for so many reasons. It just shows that humans can have a positive role, and that in 1830, when you took these humans out, the chestnuts took a dive too. And it is such to say that humans can be so good to the earth that if you were to take them away, the earth would miss us, you know? And I think that's what we're striving to do today. We're striving to become humans like our ancestors were. Humans who are so good to the earth that she actually, we added value to the system. And what they call a keystone species. That humans have been a keystone species and they can be once again. Okay, going to a more familiar territory. These are the clam gardens of some of the Pacific Northwest nations. And I will note they don't call them clam gardens. We call them clam gardens as nerds, but there's better and more indigenous terms for them. But basically, you build an intertidal rock wall. You can see this little thin dark line. What you do is you build an intertidal rock wall. As the high tide comes in, it brings water and sediment, and as it recedes, that wall will catch all that water and sediment behind, creating these pools, these calmer, stiller, more chill, warmer pools. Yeah, chill as in calm, not chill as in cold. So chill, warm pools. Just to confuse you a little more. But what's really fascinating is that we know through one survey of Quadra Island area that indigenous peoples covered 35% of the coastline with these anthropogenic clam gardens. And we also know that these are at least 2,000 years old. So these are very ancient systems, and here's where we find all the clam gardens, man-made rock walls. And so what's really important about this, however, is not just the technology. It's not just how people did it, but why people did it, because they were augmenting clam populations, not just for themselves, but also for the minks, for the otters, for the water birds, for anyone who liked to eat clams. And if you look at the literature, a lot of the elders say the clams had their own nation. They were sacred and they were equal. And so they fed the people. And so in turn, it was our job to feed the clams by giving them a safe place to live. And so this is very much a non-human-centric food system, in that we're augmenting the caloric base, not just for humans. Imagine if any one of us here planted a garden for the rabbits. We're always like, hey, get out of here. Eat my tomato, I dare you. But these types of systems often, I have found, are about creating abundance for all. Creating so much abundance that your cup runneth over and you can share with others. So getting into Native American grassland pyro management. So the Illinois Confederacy, this is a quote from another scientific article, the Illinois Confederacy shaped and altered much of this region as an anthropogenic creation. Like many other indigenous groups in North America, their most important tool was fire. Burning the prairies, they made the grasses hospitable for grazers and managed prairie as a game reserve to maximize productivity. Now, what that means is that fire opens up meadow. Fire has in its wake grasslands. And those grasslands are a very important food source for herbivores, ungulates, bison, antelope, deer. And so what you do is you essentially create, and they do this all over the world, in prehistoric times. I think that's the real history. Maybe we're more like in post-historic times right now. But what you do is you're basically creating a farm without fences, right? Because you burn here and it attracts the deer to you. You burn here and it creates habitat for the bison. And so as you're burning, you're actually creating a home for and food for other beings. And just as the deer feed you, you feed the deer through fire. So it's kind of amazing. And unfortunately, the Smokey the Bear thing has wildly miseducated us about the importance of fire and how desperately the land begs for it. And if we don't give fire, this quote I like, the earth is due her tithe of fire, and if we do not give it, she will take it. And so it's really actually a catastrophic fire prevention methodology as well, because as you burn all the time, you're reducing the available fuel load that could catch on fire in a really big way. So the burning is so important to indigenous peoples that the Miamia Nation has a lunar calendar, and in their September moon, it's called the grass burning moon. And the Miamia Nation is indigenous to what we now call Ohio River Valley. And so their burning was so institutionalized, if you will, that it was baked into their lunar calendar. And the October moon is the big smoky moon. So there was just a lot of fire going on September and October. And this is something they say. It's coming out of the Miamia Center at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. In Sasha Kayolia Kilswa, or the grass burning moon, we see fire as something that restores and gives new life to the prairie. Fire helps clear the land of old grass and brush and opens up seed pods that have fallen to the ground. Because of fire, new flowers and plants emerge in the spring. And so there are a lot of plants that actually need fire, such as echinacea. Who likes echinacea when you're feeling a little bit down? Yes, that loves fire. Their seeds have a husk that if it's not broken down somehow, it's hard for it to germinate. So fire can actually support and facilitate the augmentation of a lot of medicine plants. And I've heard that from several different native nations, that whenever we burn, we find all this medicine come up. Interesting. And so fire is so important that there's a lot of nations who have grass burning moons. And it's so important, including right where we're standing, This island used to be routinely burned, and you can really tell that it's not getting burned because all the trees are really close together, and they're not spaced properly. And these are young trees, right? None of the trees we see here today were here 300 years ago. This is a very young forest, and it's actually never really been seen here for a very, very long time. Prior to colonization, the old growth were this big around, from what I heard just a little while ago in someone's backyard, the old stump. And they would be spaced way apart so that they could be a tree, not be a tree. Trying to fight for the sun, and they're all growing tall and straight and trying to get a little piece of sunlight. But rather, they're all billowed out. And in between these widely spaced trees, you would burn. And you never have a big fire. You'd have a nice little fire like this, because there wasn't that many trees around to burn, because you'd thinned it properly. Okay, this book on the left I love. It's written in 1908, and he goes region by region, every little bit of ways in which indigenous peoples were documented to have burned the land. And we burned this entire continent, everywhere, even in desert ecosystems all around. We understood fire and ash and charcoal were medicine, and they were medicine for the land. And so on the right, you see these bison in Texas. As you know, there used to be a lot more bison here. And the bison, if you go to that very same place, it's now covered in shrubs, it's covered in trees, because there's not this, almost like a suppression of the natural succession of an ecosystem. You kind of halt it at grassland level, and you kind of keep it there. And every time it tries to go back, you kind of put it back down. And you can argue with me whether that's wrong or right, but it seems to be a really important management tool to open up grasslands for herbivores. And I would dare say that we're meant to be here. Maybe this world needed a human. Maybe we got these opposable thumbs, these big brains. These hearts need to get as big as the brain sometimes. But we have these abilities to shape the land in ways that can facilitate nature. Maybe we are nature. Maybe we're a part of this whole plan. And one thing I want to say too is that, they often imagine Native people chasing the buffalo around, but increasingly we're seeing that the bison chased us. They chased our fire as we opened up habitat all over the place for them. Okay, so this is a South American example, the Mebengokre, or the Kayapo indigenous peoples. And on the left-hand side, you see a really deep A horizon, a deep topsoil. And that whole black chocolatey soil level is completely human-made. Would not exist without humans. This is through a very amazing composting method called Amazonian dark earths, also known as terra preta. Those are English terms. I'm not sure of the proper terms. Maybe they didn't even have a term, because it was just like, yeah, of course we do this. We don't even need a word for it. We wouldn't even know what else we would do. But in any case, a lot of termite piles, a lot of crop residues, a lot of burning, and specifically burying their used up pottery shards in the soil, which supports water retention and aeration, and probably other things I'm not sure of completely. But it was a very ancient and important soil creation method. And in the middle, you see this guy showing off his chocolatey soil that his ancestors and he have worked for thousands of years to create together. And on the right-hand side, you see this map, which is a pretty big chunk of South America. And every single black dot on there is a place where we find ADEs, Amazonian dark earths. And so you can see the extent, and that's just the ones we've surveyed, the ones we know of, right? The extent of human influence in the Amazon River Basin is immense. And that clay soil beneath the black soil, that's actually what the Amazon usually kind of looks like. It's actually very nutrient poor soil. I didn't know that. You always imagine all this booming, busting life. But that's actually why they had to develop this soil creation system, because the soil was really not lending itself to the types of worlds that they could help for themselves and other animals. And so what we have is a very, very gorgeous system. Again, humans acting as a keystone species and very strongly able to argue that we would not have the Amazon rainforest as we know it without indigenous peoples. So we're gonna go also to another South American example, the Baure floodplain aquaculture. So these are, big flat floodplains that during the rainy season fill up and during the dry season recede. On the left-hand side, you'll see kind of these fish funnels, these fish weirs, this artist rendition. And on top of, and these are made out of earth, so they just pile up earth. And this system thrived from about the year 1000 until 1500 when the Spanish came. And you would plant fruit trees on top of the fish weirs, on top of those funnel hills. And that would provide fruit for the people. And that fruit would also attract game animals. So you'd also have food to hunt, although they're also considered your relatives, so you do so respectfully. And on the right-hand side, you see a canal. There was also a huge canal system. So we had everything from canals and causeways to settlement mounds where they would stay dry during the rainy season, to forest islands, building up huge dirt berms where they would plant forest gardens. You would also have these fish weirs, like I said, these little funnels that would, as the water receded during the dry season, you could catch it, and you would build these reservoirs, these little ponds, holding ponds, where you could have essentially a year-round perennial supply of fish. Raised fields where you could plant, and ring ditches, among other things, I'm sure. That's what I know about. Here's an aerial view of some of these old walls that were built, these ancient berms. And that's, just an extensive amount of woman and manpower to create that. So they estimate that the population of the Baure aquaculture system was quite large. To be able to pull this off took a lot of people. Okay, this is in the black dotted line about the amount of region where we find this. So again, a huge chunk of Bolivia was managed by human beings. This was not some little community garden, It was a regional landscape scale ecosystemic management system. And it was a community garden as well, just a very, very big one. So this is my people's community garden. Well, technically our neighbors, the Zuni, but we also do a form of it, as well as the Hopi. So essentially, every time it rains, you're gonna plant your garden at the base of small watersheds. Well, not every, it always rains during the monsoons. So you're always gonna plant your garden at the base of small watersheds. And when the monsoons come and these episodic floods come in, you're gonna build these little brush dams to slow the water. What do they say in permaculture? Slow it, spread it. So we were doing that a long time ago. And when you put your garden at the base of small watersheds, you actually kind of harness the natural waters that are coming in. And you don't have to go around and pipe the water over to you. You just go where the water is. And they call it also alluvial farming, alluvial floodplain sometimes runoff agriculture. But runoff is kind of a bad word these days, so I should probably change that. But that is what a lot of scientists are talking about. That's the term they use to describe it. And so that's how we turn deserts into gardens. And what's really cool about this system is not only does every time the monsoons come, does it bring in water, it also brings in fertilizers, phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, soil organic matter, up from the hills, because these hills have a lot of nice, yummy nutrients. So one of these fields we know was planted for 1,000 years straight without having to be fallowed for too long. And that's because it has this constant influx of both water and fertilizer without importing any of that. So if we can do it in the desert, we don't have an excuse anywhere else to have a localized system that doesn't require mass amounts of really far away inputs into the soil. I like to go to Australia. This is the Gunditjmara eel farms. This is a 6,000-year-old eel farm. And it only was destroyed in the early 1900s, or the mid-1900s, when they drained it to make a cattle farm. But I have good news. It has been restored and is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the Gunditjmara people are being honored for that work that they have done. And what if I told you the very same thing could be done on what we call Whidbey Island? What if I told you there's similar systems like this, just like all of the ways in which the clam gardens were and the kelp forests were, and I'll get into that here in a second, but purposefully planting kelp forests to augment the amount of surface area that the herring can lay their eggs, dipping cedar boughs into the water for the herring to lay their eggs. Humans had a hand in supporting herring populations all around Whidbey Island. And if that's not a farm, I don't know what is. It's a different kind of farm. You know, you don't cage it. You let the herring go and come back. But you are there to receive them, to augment their population. It's a type of farming. And I would love to see us honoring Indigenous land stewardship here in America the same way they do in Australia. I think I'm gonna go a little fast, my apologies. So here is the herring roe farms of the Heiltsuk, just a little bit north of here. I usually don't give this presentation in the Pacific Northwest, so it's kind of fun. And so the herring roe farms, if you will, are essentially, like I just said, there's a giant kelp, bull kelp, and it's very fast growing. And what people would do, and they still do, is they would tie these kelps to rocks or other things to help it sink. And right now they use ropes, which I'll show you a picture in a second, and that supports the kelp to grow more, and you literally are creating forests, kelp forests around you. Another thing they would do is dip these hemlock boughs. These are actually hemlock branches dipped into the water. And the herring, if you know herring, will lay eggs anywhere there is a place to put an egg. They will just cover everything with eggs. So what you want to do is have a lot of places for that to happen, right? So here's the herring doing their thing. And in the middle is a herring on hemlock. It is a delicacy for Indigenous peoples here. I did have some. I am a desert Indian, so it was an acquired taste. But I did like it. I did like it, and I would eat it again. I would love to eat it again. It's extreme. It's caviar. It is, and they actually sell it to Japan for a pretty penny. On the right-hand side, we see this guy with his herring on hemlock harvest. Again, he would not hold that in his hand if they hadn't had timed it and put those boughs down in late January to catch the herring eggs in February and March. And the herring is so important to the Heiltsuk people that their new year starts when the herring come. It's a double entendre. But they will start it. The herring are the renewal of the season, right? The herring will bring so much nutrients. And that's the thing I really want to say about this system. Is these guys planting these giant kelp forests, they're not doing that just for themselves. They're not doing that just for human beings. This is the spawn on kelp, as it were. And they're doing it to feed other animals. That's the mind blower, is that they say in Heiltsuk culture, the most important part of the harvest is not what you take, but what you leave behind. And this is so important to leave behind enough for the sea wolves. They have sea wolves. I didn't even know such a thing existed. Wolves that will swim into the sea. They're like all about it. They're like aquatic wolves. That's kind of like a good metaphor for Heiltsuk people. They're just like very aquatic people, but they're fierce. The bears eat it. The salmon eat it. Up the food chain, the eagles, the killer whales. These herring eggs are the caloric base of much of the coastal food web. And so by augmenting the base, they augment the entire system. And they knew that, right? They're not dumb. They've been around a few thousand years. They noticed, okay, yeah, that one's eating that. That's this, okay. Put more kelp here, a little more tree boughs over there. And again, imagine they wiped out 98% of the Celtic people. Imagine when everybody was still there, how much that coastline was bobbing with these logs that had cedar boughs weighted down with a rock at the bottom to make them grow downward into the coastline, into the waters. How many of these kelp forests were being created? Just there was a lot more people power to really have a powerful impact on the land. And that happened right here on Whidbey Island. They created these kelp forests right here. And it's so cool. So, the last thing I want to say is that, yes, this is a non-human-centric food system as well. It is designed to honor and uplift and feed not just human beings, but all beings. That's a really important characteristic of indigenous food systems. is they're designed to nourish all of our relations. So I told you I'd have a Norwegian example, and I do. So intentional fire management in the Holocene with emphasis on hunter-gatherers in the Mesolithic in Norway. Is it really a hunter-gatherer? Isn't it more of like a farmer or a gardener? I don't know. But anyways, the Holocene era is 11,000 years ago to today. So we're talking thousands and thousands of years ago in the Mesolithic. Norwegian ancestors were doing the exact same thing. Doesn't this look a little similar? Anthropogenic burning was different from natural fires in Norway. The fires set by people were smaller and less intense. They were predictable, almost immediately productive, creating mosaics in a complex pattern of vegetation, of unburnt or burnt and unburnt patches. Because they reduced available fuel, they provided protection against the disruption of natural fires. There you have it, people. We're not so different, are we? So what they mean by a complex mosaic of burnt and unburnt patches is that when you burn a patch here, you let it regrow for a year, let's say. And then at that time, you burn another patch and you let it regrow for a year. In the meantime, this one's regrown 2 years. You burn another patch, let it regrow. So each patch is in a different stage of successional regrowth. And what you do when you do this is each patch has a different set of flora and fauna because they're in different stages of regrowth. So you, with your fire, augment biodiversity in the land. I don't know if that makes any sense, but okay, cool, this makes sense a little bit. So they also do this in Australia. My advisors at Stanford wrote a ton of amazing papers on the Mardu Indigenous nations in Australia who did this exact same thing. So there's this common misconception that the further back in time you go, the stupider humans are. I think we have proven that is not true. I think we have proven that you can have an Apple Watch and a Tesla and still be an idiot. Sorry, that was mean. That was kind of mean. I'm sorry. That was a bit much. But just because we have technology doesn't mean we really know a darn thing in our heart. And just because we have technology does not mean our great-grandchildren will have a planet to live on. It can, depending what kind of technology it is and how and why we apply it. Do we apply it for self-gain and profit maximization? Imagine that clam garden being put in the hands of a venture capitalist, you know? I assure you it would not last 2,000 years. It would last a couple fiscal quarters and it would make him a lot of money. And then it would be dead. And he would run off in a yacht. You didn't really care, because the point was never really to leave something behind for future generations. It was to maximize profits now, which is the fundamental goal of capitalism. Okay, so anyways, enough about that. So my point is, it's not just the clam garden, right? It is also why you do the clam garden that sustains it. And that is the invisible world of the human heart. And that place, my friends, is where all the magic happens. Because I remember when I was doing this research, I was looking at the clam garden, I was measuring it, finding out how much there were, how old it is, what's the kind of rock it's made of. And I thought that was what was important. But the more I did the research and the more I looked around, the more I realized it wasn't really the clam garden, but it was the value system that drives the clam garden. Can you see the clam as equal to you? Can a simple bivalve be considered with as much dignity and love as you treat your own grandmother? That's what we say, that these are our grandmothers, these are our grandfathers. And our horses, too. Yes, we had horses before Columbus. That's a whole other story. Really big research is going down on that right now. And my friend just got the Marie Curie Fellowship for it and the Cleveland Newcomb Award, highest science award in the US, for her horse research, that we had horses before Columbus. We're busting myths left and right. I know, it's kind of intense. It's like, wait, what? There were horses before Columbus? Hold on, Lyla, I just gotta take that in for a second. They lied about that? What else did they lie about? Oh, Native Americans didn't come across the Bering Strait only? They were here before that? Wait a second. They told me in school they all came from Asia. No, sorry, we were here. 23,000-year-old footprints found in New Mexico. 7,000 years before we were supposed to be here. And it's even way older than that. The timeline's just gonna keep going back and back to show, yeah, we really are from here. This is our home. We are indigenous to this land. Okay, so I go on rambles sometimes. So I call these indigenous regenerative ecosystem design. I read just ways in which you can help to design ecosystems through a collaborative approach with creation. And that's just a name, but I don't know if it's helpful, but I thought I would share just in case. And I think it really points to this notion of Homo sapiens as a gift to the world, and human beings as the emissary of God, the ambassador of God, the agent of God. We're like special agents, you know, sent down to earth to protect the earth. And in Yoruba, the West African language, a West African language, there's hundreds. I think in Nigeria, there's like 300 languages or something. But anyways, one of the words for human is chosen one. Not because we were chosen to dominate or be above, but because we were chosen by the Creator to take care of the land. That was our job. And isn't it fascinating that we have the same narrative as indigenous peoples on this land? You'll hear it all the time. You can ask any native person in this room what their job is. Creator put me here to protect this area. That's what every single native nation that I've come across says. And I'm not even making that up. It's just what they say. Maybe because it's actually true. Maybe because there's this universal truth that we are meant to be warriors for the earth. And with these human hands, when guided by the right value system, can create magic. And it can also create destruction. But it doesn't make the human bad. It makes our software bad. So there's our hardware of our body, right? We got a skeleton, got some blood vessels, we got some eyes, brains, right? But the invisible world of the human mind is the program that we operate on. It's the stories we tell ourselves. It's the belief system. It's the value system. And it's the principles we live by. Those are the rudder that steers the ship of the body, right? So it's not that the human is bad, it's just sometimes our software becomes corrupted. Sometimes our software catches a little virus, right? And it's time to update. It's time to reconsider, reimagine the worlds that we want to see. I'll give you an example. One example of software is the theory of economics, right? I remember going to Stanford, sitting in econ class, crazy little girl. I was a wild child back then. And they were saying, okay, everyone, first day of class, our fundamental assumptions here are there's not enough for everyone, and everyone is selfish. And I was like, what? Because, I'm coming out of the sweat lodge where we're like, everyone is totally here for each other. And look, the buffalo skull's out there. We got to honor the buffalo because there's just abundance everywhere. There's enough for everyone. The buffalo has given us abundance. I call that buffalo economics, where we honor that abundance that is all around us. And isn't it interesting that this theory of economics has become a self-fulfilling prophecy? That now everyone is out for themselves, and now there isn't enough for everyone. But in reality, we have every ability to take care of every single human and every single plant and animal. So if we restructure our software, these are some of the software pieces of Indigenous peoples. You have respect, reverence, reciprocity, responsibility. That's that thing of Creator put us here to take care of this land. That's that responsibility piece. Relationality, aka kincentric ecology. Bioequality. So relationality is sort of like that clam, like it's not just equal to you, it's your relative, it's your grandmother. It's that warm and fuzzy feeling. That's relationality. That you really do love these plants and animals the way you love your own family. If we can get to that point, we will be truly civilized. And so this is some of the software that governed a lot of Indigenous peoples. And so there's other things too. There's like the Anishinaabe 7 grandfather teachings. Has anyone heard of that? It's really cool. It's this ancient set of teachings. There's 7 of them. I don't remember all of them, but one of them is honesty, courage, love, generosity, and things like that. And this is what every single child is taught to memorize. And of course, they have beautiful Anishinaabe words for these things that I don't know. But this is an example of the software disk you can put in your head, and that's how you live, right? And so all of you here who are artists, all of you here who are authors, all of you here who work in the realm of the thoughts, your work is so important because you are gardening the inner landscape of humanity. You are helping them have different priorities, just like Trudy did. She was just as much beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside. And that inner landscape of hers was how she guided her life. And so your work is incredibly important, each and every one of you. However you raise your children, whatever type of media you consume, whatever type of media you produce, these are all going to influence the mind, the heart. And that is the place, I think, where we're actually going to have to start to change the world. Because again, we could have all the clam gardens, all the oyster farms in the world, but if it's still governed by fear, by resume building, right? That's a big one. I want to be important. Trust me, I've been very victim to that myself. That whole thing, the whole thing of profit maximization, that is the governing story right now. And our beautiful children are coming into the world, and they are like, no, I don't want that. They're so cool, this new generation. They're always talking about trauma and toxic behavior and don't do that, They're like they're just like, I'm like, all right, can you guys just please grow up and get into office, please? And I know some of you are like, oh no, don't let my kid in office. But in any case, that's that. I'm gonna conclude the science-y part of today and go into the music part. Let's do 4 songs. Is that all right? I don't know where everyone's at. Okay, yeah, okay. Exactly, just get all sacred. 4 is a sacred number. Honor the 4 directions. Honor 4 elements, 4 stages of life, 4 seasons. We follow the Creator's numbers, as one of my elders said. Okay, so I did this with the high school kids today. Let's do it again. Okay, who wants to learn how to beatbox? Too bad, you're learning. All right, so we're gonna try like just kidding, you don't have to participate, but you're probably gonna want to. Okay, so the first sound is like a, can you guys do that? 1, 2, 3. Yes, okay, that's your, I don't know what it's called, the bass drum or whatever. Okay, then there's like the, okay, 1, 2, 3. And then there's like the in the back of your throat. Yes. So let's try like, okay, 1, 2, 3. Ooh, okay. Let's try like, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now let's try those two together. Let's try like, yeah, okay, awesome. Okay, let's keep that rolling. Let's try, okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, I forgot it earlier today, so I'm just making sure I won't forget it. Okay. We were all given sacred duties to this land. Take care of Mother Earth and she will help you understand that everything we need is in the palm of her hand. No need to drill, mine, conquer, or extract. With faith in the Creator, we will blaze a brand new path. When we let go of fear, the greed turns into laughter. Unity of all people, that is what we're after. Cruising down the red road with sweetgrass on my dashboard. Used to drug and drink, but now I'm sober, now I'm faster. Sharp as a tack, he told me, can't hold me back now. I just want to build a new world for my children. Love, prayer, and unity. This nation is rebuilding. Up from the ash of genocide and division. Red, black, yellow, white as one, that's the vision. Every race participates in this new beginning. Sacred is the masculine and sacred is the feminine. Infinite, indigenous, continuous, deliberate. Nothing can stop the people once they got their intentions set. Some people say that the land can be owned. Some people say that the land can be owned, but deep in our hearts we know that isn't so, because we don't even own this flesh or this bone. No, we can't take it with us on the soul's journey home. The only thing we own is the lessons that we know. So when we wake from the slumber to remember we are one beautiful people under one beautiful sun, we must also release all claims to the earth, because she don't belong to us, we belong to her. Mother Earth was meant to be a place where we could learn. We pray to He Sapa for a blessing on the world. We practice Satyagraha because violence doesn't work. We pray for those who are injured and those who endure. We pray for those who are injured and those who endure. Unconditional prayers for the whole wide world. We sun dance year round. Yeah, we let the sage burn, because when the prayers are united, we can see all the fire in our eyes and inspire all the people out in the day and night. So I just made that shit up. I totally lost. Because together they're... I forgot. 'Cause together there is nothing that we cannot achieve. Can I hear you say that? Together there is nothing that we cannot achieve. Together there is nothing that we cannot achieve. Together there is nothing that we cannot achieve. Find love, find healing, find unity. Hojon nahaslin, hojon nahaslin, hojon nahaslin, hojon nahaslin. Thank you. Any other musicians in here? All right, gotta be a few. Oh yeah, I know Che is. Excellent musician. Should have done this first, but you know. So I'm gonna sing a couple songs. And actually this first song is called Boarding Schools. And it is to honor the fact that my grandmother went to a boarding school. And she was 100 years old when she passed away. She just passed last month. No, yeah, about a month and a half ago. She was the most beautiful person I've ever met. And yeah, she met her husband at said boarding school. They were through and through patriots and Christians. And so they raised my mother, just try to be American, you know? I know you're just super chocolatey brown, but just pretend you're just an American. So my mother went through so many, you might know her, Pat McCabe. She went through so many challenges, finding out who the heck she was. And then she raised me to know who I am and to love myself. But the American school system is still trying to educate the culture out of Native people to this day, as evidenced by the fact you won't really find any Native authors in the curriculum, Native epistemology. You get like one unit on Indians in 4th grade, right? And it's all a bunch of inaccurate stuff. But yeah, so they sent my mother to a boarding school in the East Coast called Exeter. Different kind of boarding school. My mother did not like it. She came home. But the whole way that Dene people went into boarding schools, for us, every tribe has its own story. But we were in a concentration camp in 1864 to 1868, just outside of Albuquerque. And in this concentration camp, they essentially starved us. We had thousands of people dying, much like in Gaza right now, except right now there's millions of people facing starvation. Us, there was about 20,000, reduced to, from what I understand, about 12,000. So we were marched on a death march called the Long Walk, and over 100 miles, and they made it really long march, and they would always march us in the winter because they wanted as much of us to die along the way as possible. It's U.S. policy 101 that doesn't really get taught, right? And they put us in this concentration camp, and after 4 years of torture, systematic torture, did terrible things to our women, and the men couldn't do anything about it. Rationed water, you know, crazy stuff. We finally were allowed to leave the concentration camp. And they said, all right, you can leave, but only if you sign this treaty. And in Article 9 of this treaty, it said, in order to ensure the civilization of said Indians, that's what it said, they must agree to compel all of their children aged 6 to 16 to a proper education facility to learn a proper English education. And that's how we ended up in boarding schools as Dene people. It was literally, we had to sign our kids away to the same crazy people who were trying to annihilate us and who were supposedly so much more pure and so much more godly than we were. But you know, my grandma, she loved Christianity. And, she made it her own. And it was very beautiful, actually. I thought it was very beautiful how, even though it gave her a new way to pray, it didn't take away her prayer. She's a very strong woman of faith. So I just thought it was important to tell that story because a lot of people don't know. And I'm just so grateful for the work you're doing, sister. Let's give one more round of applause for that bill. So this song is off an upcoming album called Boarding Schools. So it's all coming together. It took me 3 years to make this album, so. Okay. When I was a little girl in the schools, yeah, they had me fooled. They said, sorry, I'm getting the verses confused. When I was a little girl in the schools, yeah, they had me fooled. One moment. Need to reprogram my software. They said your native culture, it ain't got nothing for you. And if you want success, get a gold star, be the best. So I went to the best school I could find, and I left my culture behind. When my grandmother was a little girl in the boarding schools, yeah, they had her fooled. They said that her dark skin was original sin, and if she wanted to be saved, then in Jesus' name she prayed. So she left for college on a train, and she read her Bible every day. So when I have my little girl, she'll have everything she needs. She'll have a choice of food to be. She can speak her native language, and she can still love her neighbor, love the color of her skin, see the beauty that lies within. 'Cause we remember who we are, and that supremacy was a lie from the start. You can't cut this down, there's no stopping us now. Head held high, feet on the ground, elders' songs. We hear the sound, 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 we hear the sound. You can't cut this down, there's no stopping us now. Head held high, feet on the ground, elder songs, we hear the sound. So this song is actually called Mamulad, and it's a song, Mamulad means motherland in Welsh. My first clan is my Dene clan, and my second clan is my father's mother, who's Cheyenne, or Tsetestus. My third clan is my mother's father, which is Salt clan of the Dene. And my fourth and final clan is my patrilineal clan. according to Dene ways of seeing things. And that clan is actually European clans. So I'm actually Scottish. I'm quite a bit Scottish. And we fought against the British Empire. Yes, we did. We're still fighting against the British Empire, honestly. But Welsh, Irish, and Scottish people are very much indigenous peoples of that land. And they took care of the ancient oak groves. They're descendants of the Druids. They're descendants of the people of Stonehenge. They are, in every sense of the word, a very beautiful indigenous people. And the things that you see written about them are the same things other people wrote about Native Americans. They're like, oh, the Irish scorn the civilized life. They're always in the woods. Ugh. With trees. Ugh. No, I swear to God, and then all these ancient, they're not that ancient, but 1200s, 1300s, I looked at these documents for my dissertation to show how denigrating indigenous peoples was a way of seizing land, and also erasing all the management that they did was a way of being like, oh, they don't even have a culture. They're just hunter-gatherers. As they said in the Smithsonian in the 1950s, they're transparent in the land. They're just walking around. They don't really do anything. They're just hoping to find a berry to eat. And so they did the same thing with the Scottish and the Irish and the Welsh. So anyways, Mamolad means motherland in Welsh. And so this song is called Motherland because it's actually to honor my indigenous European roots. And I wanted to sing it tonight because I think we so often forget, at least I never even knew as a part European woman, that I had indigenous roots in that world, right? We're just white, you know? We're just white, whatever that means, right? Are you Polish? Are you Scottish? Are you Italian? Are you German? These things are important because they really tried to stomp out indigenous cultures in Europe as well. And back in the day, there was a goddess culture that by and large was the most ubiquitous thing in Europe. And what they had was these clay effigies of women that they find all throughout Europe. And they found one in German soil recently. And they radiocarbon dated it. It was 40,000 years old. 40,000 years old. That's how long we've been earth-honoring, women-honoring people. And then you have the Inquisition, you have the Roman expansion, you have torture chambers, you have dog-eat-dog 2,000 years of open warfare in Europe. You have the Black Death. We carry a lot of trauma as European people. We don't even know it sometimes. And that trauma, this song is designed to try to help us to feel it and thereby heal it and to understand that we are going through the same thing as indigenous peoples here, losing our culture, losing our languages, losing our stories. And it's so important to remember. So I got to go back home to the British Isles, as it's called, and I got to be with the land, and I got to feel the land. I got to go to the sacred sites. I got to remember who we are. And specifically, this song is about the women who were burned as witches. And it's an ode to them because they were the carriers of the knowledge. They were the carriers of the wisdom. And they were burned alive for it. Also that different forces could get access to land. So motherland, Mamolad, is very much a wake-up call to us to remember who we are. And I mentioned the bards in this song. And the bards were the Scottish storytellers. They were the Scottish singers. And when the British came, what they would do is they would kill the bards first. And they would bury them face down so that their songs would die with them. And so I mentioned the bards to my great-great-great-great-grandpas. Queen Elizabeth I ordered that every Celtic harpist be hung. Every single one she could find. She hung them. But why? Why does she want to kill the harpists? Because they have the stories, they have the songs, they have the software. And so we have a lot of grieving to do, I think. But grieving isn't so bad. It's very healing. It's very important. Okay. 6 million women thrown to the flames. The library is burning. I'll remember their names. The first colonization of the human race didn't happen in America. It happened in the place of Mom. Mamulad, mother country. Magyarország, the people's land. Nasza ziemia, the people's soil. I hear you calling. We've been afraid to look at the past and see the truth that's there. But take my hand, let's walk the land. Now you don't have to be scared. There's an ancient motherland that we have forgotten, and great-grandmothers burned at the stake for holding the earth in their hands, for holding the earth in their hands, for holding the earth in their hands. Persecuted as witches, warlocks and killers, but these were not evil people. These were Europe's healers. These were Europe's healers. They were healers. And we descend from healers. And this old heart of mine, it weeps away for all of our ceremonies going up in flames. But feeling is healing, and this is how we wash away the pain. Yes, feeling is healing, and this is why I remember their names. Yes, feeling is healing, and this is how it washes like rain. So let it rain on this land. My mother's medicine lives in the earth, rising from the ashes as we remember. I can hear her songs running through my veins as my brothers blow on embers of old bard stories. I will place my feet in the Tuscan streams to mend the tattered edges of my father's dreams. My father's dreams. I will not choose war. I will choose peace. And honor the ancestors that live inside of me. Live inside of me. Live inside of me. Live inside of me. Inside of All right. Yes, okay. Thank you all for a wonderful evening. It was an honor to spend some time with you. Just gonna sing one more song. I'll be in the lobby to sign books. They're $20 suggested donation, but you can give as much money as you want to her. Not to her, but to the organization. She's very fiscally responsible. Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal, yeah, yeah. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people, oh, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I could feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I could hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. All nations rise. Rise up, 'cause now's your time. Yeah. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull it back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children in the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it on and leave us dead. We've seen the children take their own lives when they can't take the dread anymore. No, we can't take the dread anymore. Or, no, I won't take the dread anymore. 'Cause I can't take the dread anymore. Yes, it's a war, but we seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. Yes, we are the ones that grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I could feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I could hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántate, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más, porque ahorita es nuestro tiempo. This next verse is in Spanish to honor all the indigenous peoples who live south of that imaginary border that has divided a continent that was once very much connected. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada y traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía, a pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra. Respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura, hombre indígena. Tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive, a pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable. Yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres, guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más. We are warriors of love. We are warriors of peace. And we will not hide ourselves anymore. All nations rise. Rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, rise up, 'cause now's your time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you to Creator for bringing us all here and for helping me get sober and helping me be here and helping me be alive. Alhamdulillah, as our Muslim brothers and sisters say, all praise to the Creator. Thank you. Have a good day. I'll be out there in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, I'll be out front.